Good evening, everybody. Once again, I am Will, otherwise known as Artificial. I will be your dungeon master for this evening in the session of Diet D&D, as always. Another solo custom campaign tonight. Playing Scaithe, the half-elf, we have Daniel. Say hello.
Hello.
All right. Um, Something a little bit different before we go and get started. This specific campaign is taking place before your previous adventure you are on at the moment, so you do not have the same gear, so to speak, and your armor class may be different. So right now I need you to come up with your character pretty much all over again. Your armor class has to be lower, so what would you like your armor class to be?
Alright, let's see here. Well, my armor class last time was... I have it written down somewhere on the sticky note still. 14. Minus that,
It
so
has
it
to be
was...
at
It
least
was
one
12
lower.
last time. I had them both... I have several sticky notes.
Mhm.
So... Less than 12. How about 9? That seems like a nice basic number.
Ooh, 9. You might be in for a world of hurt as you get against some bad guys.
Sounds like fun.
Okay. And what do you have on your person? What items, what weapons do you have?
I have several small throwing knives,
Throwing knives,
bag of snacks,
bag of snacks.
and I have a few basic tools like a little bit of rope,
You have an adventurer's kit.
yeah, basic kit.
Okay.
Something so I don't get in too much trouble.
All right. Having this said, you are going out for a night of drinking with a good round of friends at a new bar you haven't been to at the edge of your hometown and homestead. What do you want to bring with you? I'm just going out for a night of drinking.
Well, I want to make sure I have as little coin on me as possible because if I get drunk, I'm going to lose it all.
Well, you have fashioned a room at the inn. This place is your friends have invited you to, known as the New Bastion Inn, and you're going to have a good night with friends, play some games, sing some shanties and such, have a good time drinking, and you'll stay at the inn without having to avoid, you know, horse and buggies on the way home, so to speak.
Right.
So, what would you like to bring with you? Everything you previously stated, I assume.
Yeah, you never know when you might need any of it. Someone might pass out drunk, need to make a makeshift cot for them.
All right. And at this point, do you even have your little Finch with you anymore?
For the sake of this adventure, let's say that I don't have him, since it's
Okay.
before all of that.
Alright, as usual, you know how my rules go. Anything goes. Feel free to interrupt me, and feel free to take it whatever direction you'd like. So, I already have for the viewers a general idea of this new Bastion Inn. And as of course, we don't claim to be professionals, and we don't claim any properties of any of these pictures we find. They are owned by their respectful artists and creators, of course. But
As well of the artists as they are.
getting along to this, you really don't know these friends of yours, by heart. They are new people you have just found about town, and they all decided, hey, let's go, and have a good night drinking. So you go to the bar. It is a rainy evening. You've made it just in time. Everyone's a little bit damp from outside. And you spend a good evening drinking and making merry and trying to, just enjoy each other's company for the night. A good selection of everybody. You're not very familiar with all these people. You have it's gotten to the point of the evening where it is well past last call, so to speak, and all the normal patrons have left for the night or have retired to their rooms, and it's just the 10 of you here. Um, if you would like to, I can go ahead and go around and just introduce everyone vaguely for you, because you probably would have introduced each other as seen each other at the door, I'm sure.
If you'd be so kind.
So if your pencil and pen are ready, we have the innkeeper. obviously the owner of the inn. Her name is Isabella.
All right.
We have the bartender. His name is Bertram.
All right.
They are both humans. You are unsure if they are related, but it wouldn't put past you if they were, but you're not here to judge anything like that. They do have similar features you do take notice of. You have a local magicist of Homestead, known as Marion.
Magicist.
Magicist.
Just wanted to double check.
Mhm. The local butcher, his name is Terence. As cliched as it be, he is a very strong man.
Okay.
The local smithy, this man who's handy with a weapon and a forge, his name is Simon.
Already.
One of the local doctors of Homestead, his name is Dran, D-R-A-N, Dran. And a local adventurer you have buddied up with named Akron.
Went a little heavy with the alliteration here, didn't you?
Well, it's all in a manner of pretty much just keeping track of everybody. You'll find that a little bit handier in the future.
Fair enough.
And a local guard of Homestead, his name is Giles.
Okay.
Alright. A nice little range assortment of crew of everybody throughout Homestead here. You do take notice, to hear from my proper notes, that the smithy, Simon, is a dwarf.
Okay.
The magicist, Marion, and the adventurer are half-elves.
Okay.
And the doctor, Dran, is actually a full elf, a proper elf.
Okay.
Other than that, everyone else is a human.
Noted.
Excuse me. It's, of course, that time of the night. Everyone's retired except for the 10 of you. It's
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and me. That's 9.
very good. You've noticed that throughout everyone's merriment that there's another party member who is sitting alone by himself at a table, kind of slumped over. His You do not remember this person right off the top of your head. You were not familiar with the name or anything of the sort. He seems to be kind of passed out in his over his ale. He's wearing a black cloak, and that's about all you can see. Through the stormy ambience outside, the weather has kicked up, and at this point, everyone is at least to enough of a drunken stupor to realize that they're not gone home. They're staying at this inn for the night. It's getting pretty bad outside.
How drunk am I in comparison to the rest of these people?
It's been quite a while. You all got pretty drunk. No one's passed out or anything, you think. But of the 10 of you that have, stayed here, you've played enough cards and sang enough to sober up somewhat. It has been a while since everyone's been heavy drinking. You're into kind of like past the midnight hour. Light
Okay.
drinks.
So it would not be a good idea to pickpocket anybody. Got it.
Not necessarily. And at this point, I say take it away.
Alrighty then. Well, I would like to actually go over to the cloaksman and see if he's okay. Because he seems to have been passed out for quite some time.
Alright, roll me a d20.
1. Way to start off.
Way to start off indeed. Okay. You happen to fall straight out of your bar stool, trying to get up, realizing that you've maybe had a little bit more than you thought, but that good flump to the floor happens to sober you up just a little bit more. Roll another d20 for perception.
I got 8.
You know what's funny? Michaela did wonderful rolls last night. Hardly failed at all. I think you need to take her dice.
I am using her dice.
Then something is wrong with you, Omendraz.
I can't find my purple ones. They're gone.
Don't Jerry Holkins this.
Too late.
You happen to get right up on the man before you notice that he is obviously passed out on the table. He seems to have only had a couple of drinks. There's only a few glasses on the table. It doesn't look like he's ordered anything to eat.
Well, nothing to see here. I go back over to my table and start making some small talk with everybody.
Alright. Everyone starts kind of telling stories and tales of all their escapades around town and how they've come to Homestead and all this. And it's not too long before the bartender comes over to this cloaked man's table to take his glasses, and he starts. Everyone kind of takes notice of the bartender. He starts shaking the man. Hey, are you okay? Hey. He starts shaking the man. He does not seem to be very responsive. Butcher cries out, "He's out like a light. Don't worry about him. He'll sleep it off."
He's a lightweight.
A hearty round of laughter goes around with everybody. The bartender shakes this man a little bit more violently, and he has a look of shock go over his face. You all turn to him. The bartender looks at the group of you at the bar and says, "He's dead!" Now
How did I miss that?
Takes a good gasp here, as you are for certain, everyone in there is for certain, and clamor out that, "I saw him walk in here. He came in here for sure. He can't be dead." Like, you would hardly expect alcohol poisoning to kill a man right in front of everyone like this.
I'll be honest, I didn't see anything.
The doctor quickly rushes over and tries to have a look. He checks the man's pulse, and sure enough, the doctor claims he's dead. Does anybody know this man? He poses around. Everyone kind of glances past each other, not really sure.
Well, I didn't even see him come in, so never seen him.
In fact, go ahead and roll a d20 to see if you in fact have known this man or know of him.
11, that's getting better.
Alright. You're fairly certain you excuse me, you know a good portion of people around the homestead, but this man you unfortunately have never seen before. You do not know this man. This man does not seem familiar to you.
So I was right when I screamed and never saw him.
Everyone kind of about half the people start making their way over to this man and giving you a once over, wondering what in the world. And they ask the doctor, "How did he die?" The doctor says, "I'm not quite sure. I think," he pauses and looks around at everyone, "I can do an autopsy, or at least a full body examination if no one is against it." He looks around the room.
I don't necessarily have a problem with it, but what does the bartender think? Do you really want blood all over your stuff?
Bartender gives a good look out. Hey, look, as long as he's not bleeding all over the floor, you can examine him, but we ain't cut nobody up in here. He shouts over. Doctor says, I don't think I should have to, but if that happens, we will remove him from the inn. We will take him back to the ward.
I hand the doctor my old bedroll. This should help if you need it.
The doctor lays it to the side and quickly gives the man a good look over, and a few minutes go by as the majority of everybody kind of goes back to their drinks and starts kind of, pondering, who this man could be, or, what happened, or if he's okay, or, well, of course he's not okay, but, just they're a little bit concerned. Some people try to go back to their drinks. Everyone's not uneasy, but of course, concerned, as normal people would be, even though a little bit of a drunken stupor. A few tense little minutes go by, and the doctor tells you, okay, don't know how to phrase this, but we've got a lot going on here.
Doctor, how can we have a lot going on? I don't. What do you mean?
Well, this man is obviously dead, but the cause of death is unknown, as there are several points of evidence that would lead to his death. Emotions as everyone kind of gathers around. We have here remnants of poison on his lips. I've also dusted. We have remnants of a poison on one of his glasses here. I'm not too versed in the way of runes or magic. Can someone take a look at this? He happens to motion to the man's sword. He has a holstered broadsword sitting to his side. The local magist just gives it a once over and says, kind of through a half gasp, goes, "That's a curse. That's someone's cursed this man's sword." The doctor says, I figured it was something. As he turns the man's left hand over, and there is a noticeable cut on the man's hand, which looks very infected. Magist ponders, maybe someone cursed him to injure himself. He says that we're just barely getting down to it. He pulls the man's hood off his head and unties the cloak around his neck, which obvious shows strangulation marks. It looks like someone has actually used his own cloak to strangle the man, the doctor points out. We also have here puncture wounds on his neck. 2 in particular. A crash of lightning roars out with a glorious roll of thunder as everyone instinctively looks around the room questionably, knowing that 2 puncture wounds normally means one thing, especially when it's puncture wounds on the neck.
Pyres.
Yes. The doctor holds up a hand to semi-calm everyone down and says, let's just continue real quick. Points out, we have the tip of an arrow lodged in the man's chest, shot through the heart. Possibly broken off to conceal. The man may have been dumped in here to die.
Question for the doctor.
Yes,
How fresh is that arrow wound?
it doesn't look... Well, he's clawed it up quite a bit. It looks like... I'm not quite sure about how many hours or so, but it looks like whatever happened to this man happened before he walked in here. Probably not too long before.
And this man has had one heck of a day.
We also have a stab wound right here in the stomach, possibly from a dagger or a small knife.
Jeez.
And of course, any one of these could have been his undoing, but unfortunately, it's not addressed in such a timely manner. I cannot tell what got to him first.
Is there anything else the doctor has noticed?
Go ahead and roll a d20. Everyone's going to kind of give him a once over as well.
13.
6, 18, 16, 20. Alright. The smithy is the first one to take notice that on the man's arm, his forearm is actually open. He has gloves on, but his forearm is unguarded. A distinctive tattoo, or an inking, a specific marking. He says, is anybody familiar with this? Is he part of some sort of, I don't know, group? And everyone kind of gives a look to each other, and no one seems to respond to anything of the sort. Can the guard kind of rises from his seat. Don't mean to be very intrusive here in this manner, very unlike me, but uh, I say we search him, see what he has on him. Maybe that could help us figure out who he was or what happened.
I stand up and wave around a little bit, point to the guard and said, I like you.
A few of the people nod in agreement as you meticulously unclasp his cloak and gently lay the man actually on the floor next to the table. A few people say, bartender chimes in, not on my floor! To which you remove him and put him on the table itself.
Can I lay the bedroll out underneath him?
Yes, they...
Yeah, show the dead a little respect.
You roll the bedroll out underneath the corpse, which is now on the table. You have removed all the other glasses, and the magicists have given them a once-over, giving them back to the bartender, but the one that the doctor has reported poison on stays on that same table as evidence. You go through the man's pockets and you find, other than his sword, which has a curse written on the hilt, a bounty parchment paper in his pocket that has his inked portrait on it. It says, wanted, dead or alive, and has a very large reward.
Has anyone else noticed that he's had that poster?
The adventure, the half-elf adventurer looks at you. Well, we couldn't know that he had it if it's in his pocket, Scaithe. Kind of scoffs at you like a duh. So the guard says, I'm pretty familiar with all the wanteds around the local area, but this is a new one. I have not seen any reports of this man.
Does the wanted poster look like it's from this area? Or could it be from another town?
Let's see here. Roll a d20 for me. The guard rolls a 5 and says, it's hard to make out as it's a little bit crumpled up, but it does not look like homestead quality.
Nat 20.
Nat 20. You can guarantee that this is not homestead. This is not a homestead reward paper. It's from possibly a neighboring town, but definitely not from here.
See, it's a good thing I found my actual dice.
The innkeeper asks, is there a name on the paper? Does he have a name? You all give the parchment a once-over, but there is no name. It just says, man wanted, dead or alive. It has his inked portrait and a very large reward. You continue to go through his pockets, laying the wanted paper down next to the bottle. You also find a small potion flask in his pocket. Everyone instinctively looks to the magicess to examine this. She gives it a once-over, and then gives a very quizzically curious and somewhat tart look. Looks around at everyone, looks back at this man, and goes, this is mine! Everyone glares at her. She says, yes! This is one of my invincibility potions. I had it stolen from me last week. Here, she tilts the potion up with her undoubtable signature brand on the bottom of the potion flask.
I don't mean to be rude, but fat lot of good it did him.
The butcher and the smithy kind of half chuckle. No one really seemed to heard you other than that. The smithy says, I'd like to take a good look at this sword if I can. Maybe I can figure out what town forged it or something of the sort. He motions to the magician. Is the hilt okay? She says, well, it's done its damage. I don't expect it would do much else, but be careful, of course. He slides the sword out of the hilt. The scabbard, sorry. The sword's not anything too particular, just your average broadsword. Double blade, simple handle, nothing embroidered, nothing embezzled. Use it a once over, and let's see here. he says, I'm not too familiar with this type. Hang on. And he goes over to Akron, the adventurer. He says, can you vouch for this, Akron? Looks over, and they both give a good glance at this sword. He goes, look here, right here. A chip in the handle. He goes, yeah, that's it. The smith lets you know that this was a sword of his he actually fashioned, that he was bartering, trying to sell to Akron about a couple of weeks ago, because he remembers the specific notch in the handle. They happened to mistake when they were forging the sword. And he says, I remember it went missing a few weeks ago. So a stolen sword, the guard says. This man
And a stolen potion.
seem to have a thief of some kind on our hands. Maybe that's why he's wanted.
Not a very good one if he got killed.
Well, the question here, the doctor says, is mainly whatever happened to this man happened like as soon as he got through the door or before he got through the door. So, unfortunately, we were the only people here since we reportedly saw this man come in. I hate to say it like this. The butcher gets right up to the doctor. You trying to say one of us is a murderer? The doctor kind of steps back. No, it's just, it seems, well, it's possible. Everyone kind of gives a half gasp, looking around the room at each other, questioning each other through their eyes. All I'm saying is that I would like to figure out what caused the death of this man. Whatever happens to whoever did it is not my jurisdiction. Everyone looks at the guard. The guard says, hey, look, I've been here just as long as you guys have. Whatever happened, I'm sure we can figure this out without, well, it still would constitute a murder, so to speak. Everyone kind of gives a forlorn look. Everyone is now, you find, very puzzledly looking at each other, questioning, as if to say, maybe these people aren't exactly our friends.
I chime in. I really think we need a full detail of where everyone was on an individual basis.
So,
if we get all of our stories on paper and everything, we might be able to figure out exactly which one of us may or may not have had a hand in this. Or two.
So you trying to interrogate us? The butcher chimes up.
Hardly.
The smithy kind of puts a half hand on the butcher. And look, we all know you get a little angry when you're drunk, Terrence. Just calm down.
I know personally that I don't like being called a liar. I'm a thief. I'm not a liar. And
the
everyone
guard
else in this room
kind of side saddles up to you and says, you've got a decent reputation around here, new guy, but I wouldn't really go around flaunting yourself as a thief, especially in front of a guard.
I'm also very drunk.
Right. It gives you a suspicious look, and the guard goes around and gets everyone's story, to which everyone is, heard aloud. Basically, everyone entered, not at the same time, but in order I have introduced them to you. The victim was the last one seen coming in, and everyone had, come in from the rain and enjoyed the party. Nothing special to add.
Well, so if everyone's stories are that, I think we need to start working on which wound happened first, and then we need to focus on the wounds. If we can focus on that, we might be able to figure out which one killed him and who did it.
Doctor says, I'll try to be as thorough as I can and see if I can figure out what happened when, but
whatever you can do is fine.
Bartender says, well, I've hey, I've got an idea. Kind of meekly chimes up. A few people look in his direction. He says, "Well, we know he was stabbed and he was shot with an arrow, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't shouldn't we see if check everyone's weapons?" He kind of poses. Everyone kind of glances around the room and very timidly everyone kind of agrees to. You now notice everyone's mood have kind of turned suspicious against each other, as you'd expect.
I turn out my pockets first. Just a couple throwing knives.
You have throwing knives with no evidence of blood on them. The guard asks you to put them down on the table. He says, "We're going to start making this. We're going to work smart and not harder here. Look," he says, "let's just lay everything down on the table and sort this out."
I ask the bartender if he's got any parchment and quills around so we can write down whose is what.
He motions to the innkeeper. The innkeeper runs upstairs and comes down in about a minute with a handful of parchment and a few quills and an inkwell. Everyone starts turning out their pockets. Find out that the butcher had a knife for self-protection. He always has.
That's going to be hard to prove whether or not it has blood on it because he's a butcher.
The smithy also has a knife, as well as the other adventurer.
That's questionable for a dwarf, though.
The Well, look, I'm not here to tell you what you're supposed to carry. The smithy gestures at you. Mr. Thief. How do we know you didn't steal these knives? He starts getting up in your face.
You don't. I'll give you that. But is anyone here missing knives?
Everyone, of course, pats themselves down and kind of shakes their heads, and a few no's are heard.
I raise my arms in the air. That's it.
Could have stolen from someone else, he says. He kind of grumbly walks away, not really liking you at this point, you can tell. The adventurer was the last person to turn out his knives. He seems suspicious as well as everybody else does and says, Look, we can't just stick to this one fact. How about the arrowhead? He had an arrow in him. Does anyone here have any arrows on him?"
I tell the adventurer, way to keep the thought process moving. Way to keep things moving. I'm a happy drunk.
The guard goes around and checks. No one seems to have any arrows on them or any sort of bow. You were surprised that the doctor doesn't, but he is a doctor. He's not an adventurer of any kind, though he is an elf.
Damn it, I'm a doctor, not an archer.
The innkeeper points out he's got something to hide as she points at the back of the other half-elf adventurer, noticing he has a small little hand quiver of short bows hiding underneath his cloak. Guard steps up as well as the butcher. "Go ahead. Turn him over. Don't hide anything. It'll just make it worse on yourself." He doesn't seem very reluctant to pull these bows out, but he pulls out a small little hand quiver of short bows. There's about 9 arrows in there. Sits it on the table.
What are they made of?
They just seem to be regular wooden arrows. Feather ends. Nothing special.
Well, I find it odd that it's only got 9. Normally, a quiver has a little bit more than that. Even if something of that small of a... caliber, for lack of a better word.
Excuse me. Akron looks you over. Whose side are you on? Look, I'm not telling you how many weapons you use in a day. I don't have that much. Seems to get very antsy.
It's like, hey, I don't question your methods. I was just saying that it's a little strange. Got to pick out all of the peculiarities.
The guard puts the little quiver of arrows on the table with the knives, as well as you
This was
see.
Akron, right?
Yes, the adventurer had the
Okay.
arrows, as well as you see him reach down and move his sword aside and pull out a small hand crossbow and put that on the table.